Okay, everybody. So, topic 1.4 comparative advantages in trade. Also, this is where we really start diving into opportunity costs because you need to understand how to calculate opportunity costs and how they actually function in order to understand this stuff. This is the most complicated part of Unit 1. All right, by far the most complicated part. So, and it's really easy to screw up, especially the trade part. I'm going to do that in a second video. So, I'm going to take topic 1.4 and kind of break it up into two chunks, at least two. This first part, we're just going to talk about like basic stuff, how to calculate opportunity costs, why we have trade in general. And in the next video, we'll actually get into how to calculate trade numbers. Um, that part's complicated. Trust me, people screw it up all the time. I screw it up all the time. You'll screw it up all the time. You'll have AP exam questions about that stuff. Don't screw it up there. All right, so let's get going. So question time. Simple question to start 1.4. Why don't we all just live out in the woods, make our own food, tools, and clothing and shelter? Right? If you haven't watched the YouTube channel Primitive Technology, you're wasting your life. Go watch his channel. But this guy, he goes out. It's totally silent. It's a really great channel. And he goes and he basically does everything. He makes all the pottery. He grows food. He makes shelter. He does all this great stuff. Why don't we all just do that, right? Well, think about your modern society and the modern world you live in, right? How long would that last? And think about all the people that work and live so that you can live the lives that you do, so that I can talk to you through a webcam right now. Just really take that in for a second. And today it's global, right? It's not even just in your country or your community. It's around the entire world, right? And that's mind-boggling and hard to grasp. So we're going to break it down like smaller and go back to like Neolithic time periods, like the early days of farming to really consider it. But specialization is and of labor and people working together is crucial for humanity. We could do this, but you wouldn't have doctors, you wouldn't have scientists, you wouldn't have engineers. You're definitely not going to end up with a space program if everybody had to go out and do every single thing for themselves 100%. Right? If you had to make your own home, shelter, food, all these things. Why don't we do that? Because nothing would get done. We wouldn't progress as a society, and it's not efficient. So let's talk about that. Let's get into here a little bit. I'll move my beautiful face out of here. All right, so humans live in groups for a reason. We are social beings, okay? You've probably heard that before. But we also do it for economic reasons because we can get more through trade. And now, I don't mean trade like, let's say people living in a village of 50 people, they're not like trading, they don't have open markets. Traditional economies, typically everybody kind of shares and shares alike. But what they are trading, no matter what, is time. Imagine if you are a hunter, right? You and a group of other people, you go out and hunt animals for food, while meanwhile other people go out and gather for food, and then other people take care of the children, and then other people make clothing. You are all trading your time. You're specializing, we're getting ahead here, but you're specializing on a certain skill, and you're devoting your life to that and becoming better at that. Now, could everybody go out and hunt and gather and raise their own children and do all these things? Yeah, but it's not efficient, and you're not going to get as much done, and you're not going to get as much food, and you're not going to get as much whatever. And so as a result, people live in groups because social purposes, no doubt, but also economic ones. We need each other in order to get the most benefit out of life and to progress, to get the most stuff done, to be efficient, right? So today, in our modern day world, it takes a huge amount of people to support specialization of labor. There's actually a lot of like sociologist theories and stuff about that, like how you have to have a bulk of people before you can have, there are pretty much locked in. Like you have to have X amount of people before civilization could support a blacksmith, and then so on, and then so many people before they could support, a military, for example. And just different examples. And then today, our modern day society, you could say, well, you need so many, like maybe even millions of people before you can have a professor of something, and then even more obscure things. Advanced sciences, like the people making the Large Hadron Collider and stuff. Yeah, I know the science didn't exist, but it also just wouldn't have been like possible in terms of time period to do 2,000 years ago because everybody was so focused on basic survival stuff. Now we have a lot of that under lock. We have so many people who are taking care of those things for us that you and I can specialize. I can be an economics teacher and a history teacher because I don't have to go do all these other work, so I can specialize on things. We get more through trading our time, our effort, even if it's not for monetary things. We actually all improve by working together. That's human society. So, kind of getting rambly here, but let's get back on topic. So, it takes a large amount of people to support specialization of labor. So, people who don't just get food in the ancient world. Today, like your parents probably specialize in something, most likely. Um, Even if it's like home care and taking care of children and stuff, that's specialization of labor and definitely necessary. If they're doctors or nurses or engineers or anything, they own a business, they have specialized into a certain skill and they're filling that and they're doing that so that other people don't have to and that other people can do other things. And we're trading that all off. Going back to like our Stone Age example, villagers who are best at food production should do that, and someone who is best at blacksmithing can then do that. And you might say, well, why doesn't the blacksmith just go and get food? He could. I'm sure the blacksmith could do farming too. But, and this is the next thing, what economic terms could we apply to this scenario? You could be saying things like, and think on your own, pause the video. Okay, then unpause and come back. But think on your own. The blacksmith, right, he could go out and do farming. But what is his opportunity cost? If he spends his entire day out in the fields planting crops and weeding and then harvesting and stuff, what is he not doing? What is he giving up? What is his lost opportunity? Well, he is doing that food production. He gave up the ability to do what he's best at, which is making metal goods, right? So now when the shovel breaks or you need a new plow or whatever, horseshoes, there aren't any. And there's nobody to do that job because you have your guy, your blacksmith, out doing farming work. He's not specializing. He's not focusing on what he should be doing. Think about, switch it around. What about the farmer? The person who's like, yeah, I was born for this and I can plant crops and everything and they're really good at it. They're really efficient. Could they do blacksmithing? Possibly. I mean, they could build a forge and get fires going. They don't have the muscles for it. That's going to definitely slow them down, and they definitely don't have the skills. Blacksmithing is hard. You need a lot of tools. You need a lot of skills in order to do it. It takes a lot of training. So it's not going to be very efficient. So meanwhile, they're making like one horseshoe a week. And everybody starves in the wintertime because the lost opportunity was they didn't farm food, they didn't grow the crops, and as a result, everybody's dead. So specialize or else you're all going to die. So economic terms, I think opportunity costs. If we can understand the opportunity costs, and basically who is giving up the least of something, right? Who can focus in on what they're best at means that they're going to be giving up the least of something. If we can understand that, and I'll explain to you a little more in a graph, it'll hopefully make sense. If we can understand that, who has the lower opportunity costs, then we can understand what what you should specialize in and what you're best at. All right. So, trade in general. Through trade, we can get more than we can produce on our own. I told you before when we were looking at production possibility curves that you can't go past that line, right? And you can't. If you're looking at your own personal productivity curves, you can't. But through trade, you can go past that line. You can get benefits beyond that line that would otherwise be impossible for you because you're working together. All right. Trade is not always, possible. It has to be beneficial for it to exist. Trade, in economics terms, has to be a beneficial thing. There has to be a reason to trade. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it. But if there are situations where trade is impossible, and we'll talk about that later. But whatever. So, but through trade, we should be able to get more than we are. If you can't get more than beyond your curve, you're not going to trade. There's no reason to. That's kind of the point I wanted to make. This works for individuals, towns, countries. This works for everything. This works for any way you want to look at it. So, like, think individuals. You and members of your family, maybe you have different chores and stuff, right? You're trading different amounts of time. Could you make one person do all the chores? Yeah, but that's evil and also not very efficient because now that person's opportunity cost is they're giving up the ability to enjoy life and also do other things around the house or whatever, go to work, stuff like that. Each economic actor focuses on their comparative advantages, what they're best at. All right. In economics, you're going to hear this term a lot, comparative advantage. Later on, we'll talk a little bit about absolute advantage as well, too. But comparative advantage just means that comparatively, you have an advantage. Compared to somebody else or something else, a different individual, town, country, whatever, what are a business, what are you good at, right? What is your comparative advantage? And we're going to show you how to calculate that. It's basically giving up the least amount of something. They'll tell you what you're better at. But comparative advantage, what you're best at. That's what you should focus on. And I'll give you a real world example. It's kind of jumping ahead here, more of a macro question. But why doesn't the United States of America focus on manufacturing jobs anymore? If you look here, like this graph, we see manufacturing has been on a stark decline for decades now, right? We came out of World War II and we were the manufacturing center of the world, but then it's been steadily going down. Why? Why did China become the factory of the world? And how did that happen? Well, comparative advantage. The United States of America was better tooled, especially in the second half of the 20th century, to do high skill finance jobs, engineering jobs, research jobs, all sorts of things like that, more so. Now, did people get left behind? Definitely. Not everybody's in those jobs. That's true. But the comparative advantage was that more people in America could focus on those things, and then China and other places around the world who could do factory and manufacturing jobs cheaper. They gave up less. Their opportunity costs were lower. China made sense to manufactured goods, and so we traded with them. We said, hey, you focus on manufacturing goods and we'll do the R&D, we'll do the research, right? So you do this, we'll do this, and then we'll trade and we'll exchange, and it's more efficient. Could America try to do all the manufacturing and all the research and development and all the medical stuff and all the financial stuff and all the other things that America's economy is good at? Yeah, sure, we could, but it's not going to be as efficient, and we're not going to get as much done, and we're not going to be able to go past our production possibilities as much as if we could with trade, through trade. All right, so that's why. That's why when they say like, well, manufacturing jobs aren't coming back. Well, not the same way they used to. If they do come back, they'll definitely be more automated and things like that. Well, that's getting ahead. We're not quite there yet. So everybody, every country, every whatever you want to look at will have comparative advantages typically. And that's important to understand what they're best at. And how do we figure out what you're best at? Well, you have to understand opportunity costs just a little bit more. All right. Now, I don't expect you to be able to answer this right now. All right, so I ask you down here, what is the opportunity cost per unit? Circle the lowest cost, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do that yet, but I'm gonna walk you through it here, okay? And keep in mind, this is a constant cost one. These are great to start out with. They're not necessarily realistic. I'll tell you how to calculate on a more realistic one. You're going to see the bowed out ones that have increasing costs. But since we're just getting started, this one will work perfectly for this. And once again, this is from your book, so you can go through that. I want to say it's module 3, so you can follow that along as well if you want to in your textbook. Okay, so let me ask you this. Opportunity cost is what we're giving up. Let's look at the extremes here, okay? 40 fish, 30 coconuts. If I spend my entire day getting fish, I get 40 fish. If I spend my entire day getting coconuts, I get 30 coconuts. Hopefully you guys are understanding that so far. So if I get this fish, the opportunity cost was 30 coconuts. If I get these coconuts, the opportunity cost was 40 fish. Hopefully you're with me so far. But what if I don't want to know like the extremes here? What if and this is constant cost, so we could just use these numbers because anywhere on the cost should be constant anywhere on this line, okay? So I'm just going to use 40 and 30 here because it's easier. I'll show you that you can use other numbers later, just bear with me. But 30 and 40. But what if I want to know one fish, right? Instead of 40 fish, like 40, I know I'm giving up 30 coconuts, but what if I only get one fish, right? What if I want to know just per unit, what's the opportunity cost of one fish, all right? So every one fish, how many coconuts am I giving up? Some of you might be thinking about this, and some of you might already have the answers. It's not complex math or anything, hopefully not. Let's take a look at how you could possibly do that. So to figure out opportunity cost, a really simple way, opportunity cost per unit of Y is equal to X over Y. Okay, that's a little uglier, but what you're basically saying is what you're giving up, what you're sacrificing in order to get over what you are getting. And it's basically really simple ratio here. It's a really simple ratio. The way I usually like to say it here, those output cost, other goes over. So if we're trying to understand the the opportunity cost of fish, so the opportunity cost per fish, well, the other goes over. So fish will be our denominator here. It'll be on the bottom. And then on top, we put the other thing, which is coconuts. So 30 over 40. So every one fish, so we know, for example, that if we could get 30 coconuts or 40 fish, and every one fish, though, for every single fish, it should be 3/4 or 75%. Let's look into this and see if it makes sense. Obviously, we are better at doing what? We're better at getting fish and coconuts. If I spend, for every time it takes me to go out and get a fish, all I could possibly do is get 3/4 of a coconut. I could get one fish or 3/4. I'm not even up the tree because, right, I'm just more efficient. I am better at getting fish, right? I could spend, that time and go up that tree and get that coconut, but then what would be the opportunity cost there? How would you figure out the per unit cost of coconuts? Well, if we want to know the opportunity cost of coconuts, coconuts goes on the bottom, and then fish would go on top. So instead of being 30 over 40, it would be 40 over 30. And once again, think about this. Every one coconut, right? One coconut, I'm not as good at it. I'm going to have to give up more fish in order to get coconuts because I'm just better at getting fish. One fish is equal to 3/4 of a coconut. I didn't even get a single coconut. But every coconut, what's the answer? Every coconut is 1 1/3 fish because I'm just so much better at getting fish. Every coconut, for me to go all the way up that tree, get the coconut, come on back down, maybe even crack it open, I don't know the scenario here. In that time spent getting that one single coconut, I could have gotten one whole fish and be 1/3 of the way towards getting the other fish. All right? So the opportunity costs are a little different. Fish has a lower opportunity cost. In this example, this person on our desert island, they are better at getting fish because they are giving up less, right? For every coconut, it's 1 1/3 fish. 1 1/3 versus not even one. Yeah, and just think that way. So they are giving up the option. They're giving up the ability to get, if they go for coconuts, to get a whole fish and a little bit more. Hopefully this stuff's starting to make a little sense. I know it seems a little weird once you start using it. And really, the math's not complicated. Just put the other over, and then you can calculate it down. And notice things like 3/4 are going to come up a lot. The actual AP exam, no calculators, so most of the math you see is going to be kind of like this. You'll see a lot of like thirds and stuff like that as well too. All right, so pardon me. One fish, the opportunity cost is 3/4 of a coconut. It's not even a whole coconut. Otherwise, one coconut's 1 1/3 fish. So this person's better at it. But you're like, well, wait a second. You just used the extreme numbers here, right? You just used 30 and 40. What if we were talking about like, A to B here? Okay, it should still work, right? Because these are constant costs, constant opportunity costs. You can check points A to B. So let's see here. At point A, 15 to 20. So at point A here, we're going to get 15 coconuts and 20 fish. Well, let's say I decide to wake up the next day. I'm like, you know what? This is too many coconuts. I'm going to go for fishing more. Well, to go from point A to point B, which both efficient, both productively efficient, I am going to do what? I'm going to give up the ability to get 6 coconuts here. See, 6 coconuts will be lost by me moving from here to here. I'm going from 15 to 9. But what am I gaining? At the cost of those 6 coconuts, I am going to gain 8 fish. So what is the opportunity cost of this fish that I'm getting here? I'm getting 8 new fish. Great, congratulations. But I'm giving up the ability to get 6 coconuts. So other goes over. So the opportunity cost of these fish is what? Well, let's see if math works. So I'm giving up 6 coconuts to get 8 fish, 6 over 8, and it's 0.75, 3/4. So once again, the opportunity cost of fish is 3/4 of a coconut. Hopefully that makes sense. If you go the other way, right? If you go the other way and you say, well, I want to get those 6 coconuts, I'm sick of fish. I want to go from B to A, and I want to get those 6 coconuts. What are you giving up? Well, you're giving up 8 fish. So what was the opportunity cost of you getting more coconuts? Well, opportunity cost of coconuts is equal to that with fish over coconuts. You gave up 8 fish to get 6 coconuts, 1 1/3, repeating 1.3333 or 1 1/3, 4 over 3. By the way, on AP exams, they don't require you to reduce your fractions unless they decide to change that this year. So if you did say something like 4 over 3, it would be considered a correct answer. Don't tell your math teachers I told you that because they'll beat me up. But anyway, so hopefully this stuff's starting to make a little bit more sense. Give you this as well. I'll throw this at you here and this is probably where we're going to stop this video. If you had one with increasing opportunity costs. You can't use the extremes. You couldn't use 30 and 40 because the increasing opportunity costs bow out, and those are more realistic. Basically saying that you have to give up more of something in order to get something. The opportunity costs are increasing as you move towards the extremes. If you want to figure out, and usually when they give you those kind of questions, what it'll be is like, what calculate the opportunity cost between like these 2 points. That's a typical thing that they're going to give you, and so you'll be able to look through it and say, oh, okay, between point A and B, it would be this. And here they're constant, so the opportunity costs are the exact same anywhere on this line. So A and B are the exact same as the extremes, but in the actual like bowed out ones you see, make sure you read the question. Make sure you know what points they want you to use. All right. I think that's pretty good. Hopefully you guys aren't super lost. I'll probably post other videos of other teachers and stuff explaining this because this is an important concept, understanding this. And if you don't get this, then the next part of 1.4 is impossible. So hopefully you guys can figure out that. Big thing though, going the wrong way. Output costs, because we're figuring out like outputs of things, how many fish or coconuts you can get. Other goes over. So fish, then put coconuts on top. If you're finding out the opportunity cost of something, make sure it is on the bottom. All right, make sure it's on the bottom. Don't screw that up. As long as you can remember that, other goes over, you'll be fine for this. All right, hopefully that helps, and I'll stop here. No, I won't, because you don't want to stop.